Yep, we are live now. Testing, testing. Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I don't know if we should wait for a few minutes for gathering up,
Yeah,
or
yeah. Why not?
we are now live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. So I don't know if
Well, you
I
know what?
have
I
a
haven't been
place
able to
here.
get on. I haven't been
Sorry.
on get on Facebook for 2 years because of their
Oh, really?
ridiculous customer service.
Oops.
Yeah, I when I switched phones, I didn't save the authenticator. I didn't transfer the
Yeah.
authenticator for the 2FA. So
Mm,
they have this never-ending loop that you can't get
yeah.
any support, and I refuse to
It's
conform and just create a new account. I'm gonna make them come to me.
yeah. It's their loss actually. Yeah, really. Yeah, but you're not
Oh, I
missing
probably
much.
save a lot of time.
LinkedIn and
Yeah, I probably
Twitter
save a lot
is
of time anyways.
yeah. I agree. Karim, I can't see how many do we have. I think we have one. Oh, we can see the number of people here at the top. So no, not much till now. But maybe after a few minutes, we can start seeing more people. Okay. Where do you see, Karim, that there are more than 10? I can see on the statistics, I can see less than that. But maybe these statistics are not. Oh, it's not correct. Okay, yeah, because it shows that there is only one. So maybe this one is the people who are inside this StreamYard room, not in the outside social media channels. So yeah, shall we begin?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, so today's session, of course, I want to thank you for your much for your time and for your continuous support for Proven and for us personally. So it's really I mean very valuable to us. Thank you very much. So just to begin with,
Oh, my pleasure.
uh, thank you. So yeah, and the other thing I wanted to tell, of course, this session is a little bit advanced session for product managers specifically, and for people who are building products in general. So I want to start with a question that sounds very naive, but I often get different answers and different thoughts around it, which is what is product management? Because a lot of people, define it differently, and in different organizations, in different setups, it works differently. It's not always, the same function in different places. So how do you, if somebody asks you to describe or explain product management very simply, how can you define it?
I love that question because over the course of the last few years, we have really, um, I would say, the definition of product management has changed a lot in a very short time, where it went from being a certain type of role to then this warped new version in some cases of where you're just delivering a lot of feature factories nowadays, which is really a difficult area to be. Simply, to put it very simply, if someone asks me what I do, I tell them I solve problems and I create experiences. And
Wow.
that is, to me, the simplest way to put it, because we are in the business of aligning the goals of we're aligning the goals and the strategy of the business to a problem or challenge to be solved with the users, our customers, our stakeholders, and not being concerned about the how that is implemented, but really more concerned about the why and the what. And so, with that why and what is identifying the best way to solve that challenge. And at the same time, is how do you create that into a memorable experience, something that resonates with the user, where it's not just transactional, where they do something and you get something back, but really about becoming part of their day-to-day life. Even something as simple as a habit tracking app can be something that connects with you, and then all of a sudden you're 60, 90, 120 days into a habit because you've resonated with the experience. So that's the simple thing, is the simplest way of putting it is solving problems while creating experiences.
Very nice. So yeah, of course, I can relate to that very well. So yeah, so product managers often feel that they are responsible of everything. So what do you think are the actual responsibilities of product managers? What should we care for? What should we focus on, and what we should not, take onto our own responsibility?
So I think to answer those in maybe the reverse order about what not to take on in terms of responsibilities is forget about being the savior. Forget about being the one who's going to fix everything or deliver the win every time. Just take that off your plate right now because that's not your job. Your job is to, like I said before, you're solving challenges that align with your business and developing those ways to connect and understand who your users are. And if I was to tell people today what they should be focusing on more with their products, it's actually talking more with their customers, getting more information about not only why are their users using it, what keeps them engaged, what makes them happy, what do they want to see, and then what outcomes are they driving to as users. That's a key area where a lot of companies right now are not focusing on. They're focusing on launching and getting it out there and then forgetting about it. Now, as a father, as fathers, you and I, okay, the example I like to use with this a lot of the time is um, when you have a kid, the kid can't take care of itself at first. It's a baby. You have to mature it. You have to hold its hand. You have to feed it. And eventually it's going to get up and start walking, but it'll stumble and fall. Eventually, at some point, the kid can take care of itself and stand on its own 2 feet and becomes independent. That is exactly the way I focus on our products that our teams deliver is that we look at it as being as we're not just going to have the kid deliver it and be like, bye. We're actually going to focus on being um, good parents of the product and making sure that we are focusing on maturing it and raising it so that it can stand on its own. Uh, and I think that that's a key area. And another one in terms of like responsibility wise is I don't want to sound like everyone else who's going to be like it's your job to find product market fit or to establish maintaining roadmaps and working with development teams. That's obviously no one with it. The real area is where in product is that we're a Swiss Army knife. We do 13, 15, 16 things, and we don't do them all amazing. But if you've ever used a Swiss Army knife, the knife cut's pretty good. But if you've ever used the can opener, it's horrible. It's so impossible to open things. But the screwdriver's pretty good. So in that sense, we're negotiating with stakeholders. We are meeting with partners and vendors. We're talking to users. We're aligning schedules. If your company has a PMO office, you're dealing with project managers who are trying to force you into a time box, and you're telling them that no, that's not how we operate. You're working with your design teams and your engineering teams to make sure that they're delivering and very clear about what's going on. These are all the elements that are really most critical because that is what allows you to focus on the bigger ticket items.
Yeah, I agree. So I often feel that product management is like separated into two parts. One part is like product strategy and decision making, understanding the users and this kind of stuff. And the other part is more about delivery and aligning teams and making sure things are working well together and this kind of stuff. But when you define product management as broad as you did, like problem solving and market fit and this kind of stuff. So in order to achieve market fit, everything needs to work correctly. So you feel like when you tell me that this is the responsibility to reach market fit or to apply the key North Star KPIs, it means that you have to do everything, right? Starting from
No,
the
but the thing is, you're
janitor's
not
job
you're
to
not
the
gonna
CEO job.
you're not gonna do everything right though. That's the funny part though,
Yeah.
is when you
Mm.
say like to get to that point you have to do everything right. It's failure is an actually amazing part of product management because it's where you're gonna learn the most things. It's where you're gonna get the most opportunities. I went to an event in Dubai last night where they were asking about who here has failed in their roles product at one time or another. And everyone, including myself, raised my hand, raised our hands. And the person actually caught the attention where he said, well, actually, I've never failed at my job. And I was like, yeah, you're full of it. That's not true. Like, you know what I mean? And said, I don't view failures as failures. I view them as opportunities. And I was like, wow, I'm like, that's really profound. That's actually
Mm.
a very good way to look at it. And that's one that I normally try and do. And so when you look at it that way, it's like sometimes you achieve product market fit through those failures and through those learnings that come with it. But it also now makes me think of a very good point, is that I think one of the other responsibilities as a product manager, to go back to the previous question, is to really be an evangelist or a steward of the product discipline, of the product management capability, which means educating the people in your company what you do and what you don't do. It means holding the teams and the stakeholders accountable and not letting them go through different ways of how they accomplish things, and embracing and personifying that positive attitude, because you have to be the motivator. You have to be the one who can give the bad news and give the good news. That's a very, very difficult soft skill to master, especially the art of saying no. Incredibly difficult, and one that I still
Yeah.
struggle with to this day.
Yeah, I'd like you to shed more light on soft skills importance in product management, because communication and decision making and this kind of stuff. A lot of people think product management is about understanding the Scrum manifesto and the and the meetings that we need to do and the road mapping and the writing user stories, and it's much more than that, correct?
It totally is. I mean,
Yeah.
um, people, process, and tools are obviously the biggest parts in a lot of companies. And you can have the best tools, you can have the most tight processes, but without the people with the right mentality, without the right
Mm,
attitude, and desire to accomplish great things, it's useless. It's totally
yeah.
useless. Um, when I look at it, I've always explained to new teams that I'm working with is that from the engineering side, there's knowing and being familiar with the agile process is something that's important.
Mm,
As someone who's been part of the agile community since 2006, it's been a huge
mm.
part of my life. I mean, even my son growing up had a Scrum board for his tasks,
Nice.
and we would pay his allowance based on what his velocity was at the end of the week. So I mean,
Wow.
I'm a believer. Don't get me wrong,
Mm,
but I truly think that with um, understanding that and working with the teams is great. But when you are in a very, very nice restaurant, you're not in there telling the cooks how to cook or how quick to cook. You're expecting to be of the quality level and the desire to put something out that's great and delicious, that they are actually going to, they know how to cook the meal. They know it has to be quick. They know it has to be hot and fresh and everything has to be right with it. And so they're going to do their best to deliver that to you. You don't get in that way of that process. And from the product side, I consider in that restaurant example is that we are the ones who are picking the menu because we know what our customers want and we know why they want it. And I've sort of been using this phrase a lot lately, but it's, from my impression is that, when you go to a restaurant, you take that first bite, you know right away if you're going to go back or not. And so I've sort of coined that the digital first bite. And for me, it's like when someone uses our products, our apps, any of our digital experiences, I want that first digital bite to be delicious. And you only get
mm.
there by creating a great meal, using the best ingredients, and doing it the right way.
Yeah, so what we are trying to say is that the process itself is not the important issue here. What's important is the results. Am I getting this correctly?
Yeah, of course, because um, when I am focusing on outcomes that I'm trying to achieve with our products
Mm,
and helping guide our teams to what metrics or results or outcomes that we want to try and achieve. Um, if we can agree on what those are and how we define
mm,
those and how we define success or failure and how we're going to get there, then I'm not concerned with the how. I don't care what process they use. They want to use Kanban, they want to use Scrum, they want to go full out waterfall. If
mm,
commitments are being made by the team and they're meeting them with the quality that's expected, I have no problem with that because every team works differently. You can't put a square peg into a round hole. And if a team decides that they want to work a certain way to be able to deliver the way you expect them to, and you tell them they can't and they have to follow Scrum or they have to follow this way
Mm,
or that way, then all you're doing is not empowering them. All you're doing
yeah.
is rejecting the core values of Agile, which is about empowerment and courageousness and being open and transparency. You're violating all those just because you wanted a certain
Mm.
way or someone else has said that, and that's totally counterproductive.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people just starting out with, want to follow every single rule, and there's a lot of rules and there's a lot of meetings specifically. So if you actually applied all these meetings, you will not have any time to work. So yeah, what do you say to those people? I've seen a lot of people like working like this. Say, this is a good, this is right, this is by the book. We need to do that, right?
Been there, done that. Okay, so
Ah,
I'm right in that. I'm in that
guilty.
mix of people too. When I would
Yeah,
get hooked on a new platform or new process or the latest version of Agile, whatever it was back then, I was like,
yeah,
oh, we have to do this. It's so and so said it, so it's the best way. I
yeah.
think what the experience I got out of that was you will learn over time what works and what doesn't work with certain kinds of companies and sort
Mm,
of framing this in the corporate versus startup atmosphere
mm,
is that you will see that in the startup space you have a lot more flexibility to try new things and
mm,
um, I don't want to say gamble, but like take your appetite for risk is bigger in startups because you're concerned
yeah.
about getting from A to B. Whereas in a larger corporate structure, you are sometimes being put into a larger framework machine that you are one part of, where your agile sprint is actually one section of a giant waterfall project. And
Mm,
you can't go through and convince the entire company that, the way you're doing it is the right way. So you have to follow it this way by the book. You actually have to
mm,
then go out there and show them that um, we do it this way. We always deliver. We meet our commitments, and we are higher, more productive than the other teams. That's not saying we're
mm,
better or worse, but saying that our process works for us, and
yeah.
that's why we deliver.
I see. Yeah, I totally agree, of course. So, yeah, since about the topic of this session, actually, which is the large versus small organizations or corporates versus startups, a lot of people, especially when we started Proven, a lot of people started asking us about the team structure. Shall we have a CPO or a head of product and other product managers? How many levels of hierarchy we should have? Should it be flat? Shall we have someone only one person? So of course, in people are often curious about how product works in big organizations versus startups. So we haven't seen product a lot in big organizations, but you have. So how it actually works in huge organizations, in huge corporates, and how many hierarchies they have, and is it all necessary?
So in reality, it really depends on the company, okay? Because
Yeah.
with a company such as Amazon, for instance, now I lived in Seattle for 10 years. I was while my time there, I was head of product at Boeing, which is a massive company. I was at Hasbro for 6 years, leading product teams there. Uh, and so I got to experience a lot of different flavors. But because of Seattle having Microsoft and Amazon and Starbucks in their headquarters there, I got to also understand how other large corporations worked as well. Now, in an
Mm,
Amazon sort of sense, you will have a much more traditional product management structure where you will have a team working on a product. Let's just use Alexa, for example. You'll have an
mm,
Alexa team. There'll be a director or general manager of product who's sort of leading the entire product management team. There'll be a number of group product managers and a number of senior and L4, like entry level product managers underneath those. And they will have their own rhythm of how they operate, meaning that they'll have their own pods, their own teams, and work in a very where they're all pipelining into the good of the product. And
Mm.
at the director level there, the director is usually reporting up to another senior director of
Mm.
probably like maybe the IoT or the interactive tools, something that would be encompassing Alexa, another tool, another product, another
Mm.
product.
Mm.
Um, and then, you know, if to maybe pivot because it's a little bit better example. But if you look at Microsoft Office, there would be like in that teams, there's like a VP of products for like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and then they have their sub teams like I mentioned earlier, and they probably
Mm.
report to a senior director of Office who reports to VP of like enterprise applications or something. I'm
Mm.
this isn't factual. I'm just giving you
Yeah.
what the structure looks like, which means
Yeah.
that you're still about 4 or 5 levels from someone in like from Bill Gates or whoever, the
Yeah.
CEO. Okay,
Yeah.
showing my age, Bill Gates. Yeah, but in the startup space, you are in a much more fluid area where you could literally be 1 to 2 levels, 1 to 2 hierarchy away, meaning that you may report into a VP who reports into the CEO, but your
Mm.
access to that executive is far greater. Your ability to drive impact is far greater at the startup level because you have that direct access. Um,
Mm.
but you also, there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of differences though, just outside of the structure. And so when you're in the startup, the structure is leaner and obviously less levels of bureaucracy, but you're also under more pressure sometimes. Whereas in having the larger structure, you have a little more latitude to be able to coordinate and collaborate because you have that depth of size to you.
Mm. But how if it's like very much divided. So, for example, you mentioned for if Alexa, for example, have, as you mentioned, maybe about around 20 or 10 plus product managers in different levels. So if it's so divided like this, every person will be like taking a control of a very tiny part of it. And how can we connect all these parts together? I mean, it makes more sense if I'm like I'm overseeing the overall experience of Alexa. Maybe one level of dividing below me, like I don't know, voice commands, hardware, stuff like that. But more dividing, would it still make sense?
So I can speak to this from a true example is that I
Mm.
know a product manager at Google who works on the Chrome team, and
Okay.
he is the product manager for the toolbar, the
Okay.
toolbar up at the top,
Yeah.
bookmarks up top. His
Bookmarks.
days and night are about the bookmark bar at the top underneath the URL, and he does research into and tries to get to talk to users about what they use it for, what they don't use it for, about how they like bookmarks. He's looking at
Mm.
data, analyzing. I think that goes to sleep thinking about bookmarks and wakes up thinking about bookmarks. Okay, and you would be
Yeah.
like, that sounds absolutely horrible, but it's not, because to him he loves it because he's also working with a larger team that's focusing on all these different elements, and they're not working in silos. They're collaborating and
Mm.
harmonizing what they're doing together on a bigger scale to say, we're going
Yeah.
to do this, and then it's going to connect with this, and it's going to connect with that, and here's how our
Mm.
feature updates are going to impact your area over there. And there may be pushback and negotiation, but at the end of the day, they're all focusing on a slice of the pie to essentially make sure that every facet of the product is getting attention, and that's definitely something you wouldn't get in a startup.
Yeah, getting attention. This is I mean a key word that we are very lacking in the Middle East, I would say, because I've met with a lot of people who are entrepreneurs who have raised funds, millions of funds and stuff like that. They don't really care about product management, or even you actually care about product management. I mean, not to the level to have a specific person for each user flow or for each feature as you just described. Uh, they think that, for instance, and I always had this question as well. For instance, Slack or Pinterest. How could it be more improved? How it's it's perfect as it is, but the surprise is every few months you actually found it improved. So you don't know how. So it's a chicken or egg dilemma, because the person who is taking the decision to hire, he thinks that if I hire somebody, what he will do more than what we already have, or we already have somebody who's overseeing everything. We don't need more attention to details. But actually, if he hired somebody, he will see the outcome, but he don't know that because he didn't he didn't take this, he didn't try it out, right?
And see, that's interesting though, because you say that Pinterest was perfect, as it was, right?
This is what I thought.
But
Yeah.
that's right. But that's one person, where another person could have a totally different perspective. Or the data that's being gathered in the daily activities could be showing something totally different of an opportunity for an experiment, which is something
Mm.
also I feel in the region right now, and probably in a lot of other teams in the world. Experimentation has taken a back seat because it's not, it doesn't bring money right away, or if it
Yeah.
fails, it's not worth it. And so from that space where it's like, um, that as an example, experimentation is so critical. Um,
Mm.
and you get that. That's how you get those features on something like Pinterest. I love, because if you haven't known, I love food, so I always use it as an analogy. For those of you out there who are watching and don't know my little secret, I used to be 200 kilos, so I really loved food. I was
Wow.
a massive guy. But
Mm.
if you look at like a fine dining restaurant, there's that person at the end who's the one making sure the plate is clean. They're putting the little tiny, um, coriander on top of it very gently, and they're the one
Finishing.
who
Yeah.
they see it last before it goes out the door. The person who actually cooked it is on the other side of the room, that hasn't seen the outcome, but they were actually
Yeah.
probably the biggest part of it. And that's so in line with the product mentality.
Yeah, I think it's a huge challenge, and I'm sure you've seen this in the Middle East, how to communicate the importance of this attention to details, especially that product managers are not really cheap as well. So how to convince them that it's important to hire those people, and they will make a lot of difference in the outcome, and even in the business objectives and KPIs and everything. How to bridge this gap and to communicate with business owners and founders and CEOs the importance of product management.
So, and I swear, I tell you, I'm not plugging proven, okay? But is that this is why I believed so much when we first met about what you guys are doing, is because
Mm.
a lot of companies need to know what product managers do.
Mm.
And um, in the startup space, I saw this. I've seen this plenty here in my 4 years here, especially over the last 3 years. Startup founders will not let control go because they're too either regressed in their own way of doing things over the course of their previous jobs, okay, or they second guess the person they hired as a product leader because they're not confident enough in their own decision making skills. So they think
Mm.
that they actually know what's right, even though I'm not going to second guess my mechanic. If I bring my car in because it's broken and he says it's the fuel line, I'm not going to be like, no, 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 it's not. It's really the battery. You don't know what you're talking about. No, I hired you because you're an expert. So
Mm.
I think that with services like this to educate what they should be looking for, what they should be hiring for, better evangelism of the product management art to not only other product community members, but also to businesses and startups and venture hubs and even big businesses, so that they know when they're hiring, they know why they're hiring, what to expect, not to be surprised, and understand what comes with that. Because you mentioned like
Mm.
a lot of people are entrepreneurs. You know what? I don't even know what that means anymore. Okay, because I see everyone now. It seems like everyone's a serial entrepreneur and a serial investor, serial VC. It's like sometimes I want to be like, you know what? Right now, just right now, I just invested in 32 startups. $1 a piece. and they all failed. But I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started them all.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm a serial investor. I put $1 into all of them. That's so for me, the term entrepreneur has now meant is that someone who is going to take a shot on an idea that can have an impact, and they're going to do it with their own resources at risk, either money that they've raised or their own money or bootstrapped or whatever. Whereas an entrepreneur, which I consider myself more of an entrepreneur, is someone who has that same smarts, hunger, desire, but does it better in a bigger company or inside of a something that has a lower threshold of risk, but also a lower return on investment, or lower maybe financial reward or something.
Yeah, I agree. So I often get asked about in startups, when should founders start hiring product managers, and when they should start hiring levels of hierarchy of product managers. So when to start hiring even one person, and when to start hiring, a CPO, a senior product manager, a group product manager, because they
So I
always
mean,
feel it's very early. They always feel we don't need it, we don't need it, we don't need it. So when it should be, when it's needed, when they actually need to hire someone.
it really depends on what the backstory of the product is. Okay.
Mm,
Because in some cases you may have a startup that has an idea, but that's all they have. They got money,
mm,
they got resources, they have an idea, but they really don't know how to now take that idea or that challenge and make it something into a product, or what the right product is. Is it a mobile app? Is it a SaaS platform? What is it?
mm,
In those cases, I think that you do need to recognize that you're not in your comfort zone, and you should be looking at bringing on at least um, product a product manager who you can then have grow with the early stages. Whereas to
mm.
when you are launching, you can now look at it to be able to see where the right point is to scale the team. The reason why is um, it's not, it's like, 7-person company. It's like, I'm the CPO. It's like, great. You're also the senior product manager, the director of product management. You're all
Exactly.
of these positions. Congrats.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
but with knowing when to make those other hires, is I think that's an interesting spot, because in the startup space, for me, not saying this is the way to go. I'm saying that my general idea has been is that you bring in someone who is, depending on the background of the company, who's either been a group product manager, or maybe a director, or even a senior product manager who's ready to go into their first leadership role. And you bring that type of level in first. Okay. You don't just come in and bring in a 20-year CPO into your 7-person startup, because more than likely that 20-year veteran CPO has been out of touch with actually launching a product, hand by hand. They've been doing
Mm,
more leading and more strategic visionary work of the product function, but they haven't been in Jira writing user stories, or they haven't been in,
yeah.
grooming sessions, or launch, or,
Mm.
done a
Discovery.
go to market or something like that. Yeah, exactly.
Mm,
Exactly. So, my suggested way that I would recommend, if someone asked me this question point blank, would be bringing someone who's in that mid-senior level, maybe director level, with maybe a year or two director level experience, who's hungry and who wants to do, really challenging things. And the minute you find the inflection point of where your capacity is starting to cap out, where you're starting to not pay attention to things like user feedback or daily data, because you're doing other things now, is the time before that to bring
mm,
in 1 to 2, maybe one product manager, one junior product manager, or bring in someone with a marketing background who wants to get into product, but they've never done it and can't get a break
mm,
anywhere, or someone with UX or design experience who wants to get into product and work on those other skills, and but can't get a break anywhere. Because here's why: is that number one, they're going to be hungry and they're going to have the attitude and the passion to learn how you want to run your product team, and they are not going to bring baggage from another company where they're going to be like, well, at insert random company name, we did it this way, and it's like, well, you know what, you're not there, you're here, and we're 9 people, so we need to figure out a different way to do it. And you can bring them into the mentality of the larger vision of the company and get them bought into it. But at the same time, now they're bringing in marketing skills and design skills that you didn't have on the team. So now you have people who can look at different aspects, and those people can then learn from each other, upskill each other. So now what you've done in the course of the first year is that you've brought in 2 people who will build loyalty within your company. They are been there from the early start of the product launch, and they bring unique skills that you don't have the money or sometimes the resources to bring on board. And now you're upskilling each other with those people to have a pretty solid team very quickly.
I see. So yeah. So one of the reasons I see a lot of founders and CEOs kind of like I don't want to say afraid, but not really encouraged to hire product managers. It's that, as you mentioned, they are afraid to lose control because currently they are taking all the decisions. And it's not about ego or something, it's just about that they are afraid. They think that I don't know, maybe they are right or not, but they think that they are taking all the decisions that they are taking will be better than anybody else because they are in this domain more or anything else. So this is one side of things, especially after what Brian Chesky, the co-founder of Airbnb, I'm sure you must have seen what you've been saying, and this kind of founder movement, if I might frame it this way, versus that you need expertise and you need people that actually know what they're doing, and you need people who actually conduct make discovery calls and understand customer needs and go into every detail and ask every question. And so about this debate that is going on in the, I don't know what to call it, in this sphere that we are living in, what do you think, or what side are you in, and what do you think about this debate?
So I think it's very convenient that the CEO of Airbnb can make radical decisions like this. Of course, okay, it's really easy once you're into the millions of dollars in revenue and everything. Yeah, it's easy to take risks like that. If you fail, then you're considered brave and courageous to take a risk. And if you succeed, then it's like, oh, I'm a genius. But if the same thing happens in a smaller company, and the person does that same exact thing, they're too risky, they're whatever. So there's a little bit of hypocrisy that the media sort of builds around this narrative. And I think it's pretty disgusting, to be honest. And you asked how I felt about it. This is how I feel about it. Because when I look at this, when we talk about losing control, it's not about losing control, it's about losing power. And the reason why how I differentiate that is that if you hire a strong product person on your team, they will challenge you with data, they will challenge you with industry trends, with benchmarks, to validate why they are pushing back against you. But they will not take your control away. They will just assure you with the right ways of doing things of why the founder's decision isn't the right one, and here's why. But because we don't explain to these founders in reality what product managers really do, they just what they see or what they think, they assume they're going to hire a product manager and they're not going to make any more decisions. And that's a fallacy. That's a really incorrect way to think about it, because you want to going back to the soft skills, that product person will be able to calm and manage the expectations of the stakeholder, in this case, the CEO. They'll be able to be transparent and visible with the status of things. They will research and get data to make data-driven decisions. that's how you maybe soothe the nerves of the CEO founder.
Yeah, but you think that this is a mistake of the founders that they are not aware enough of how product management dynamics works, or that there is a lot of product managers out there who don't really get it, that they need to back up their decisions and their opinions with data, and not just say that this is the right thing because this is, I'm the product manager and I'm the mini CEO of the product and this kind of stuff. So what do you think is a problem, that this is this is a problem is out there?
I think that it comes down to how people are in learning about what product is and
Mm,
learning why they want to get into it. I get a lot of messages and requests for, like, mentorship calls and things like this from people who are, I'm looking to get into product. I was in data, I
yeah,
was in this, I was in that, and they're talking about I want to get into product management because I want to, do this and do that. But they don't really tell me a true why. And I always ask myself,
yeah.
why do you want to get into product?
Mm,
And some of them will come with the 20-year-old statement of, I want to be the mini CEO, which is
mm.
just the most laughable description nowadays. Anyone who would tell me that, I would just be like, okay, I'm going to bed. Good night. Um, and, and
Yeah.
then, uh, and then where are you learning about product? Okay. Because, you know, am I allowed to say some hard truths here? Am I allowed to be a little
Yeah,
blunt for a
totally.
moment?
Yeah,
Okay,
of course.
cool. Okay, I'm going to
We
crank it
want
up a
to
little bit
hear.
here. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to crank it up a little bit here. Is that if you're going to certain certifying bodies that have nothing to do with product, okay,
Mm,
and they offer product management certifications, and you're going there
yeah.
and because they're a trusted name in the industry or something
Yeah.
like that, but not for product, and you're like, oh, I'm product management certified by CMI or whatever it is, you know what I mean, whatever
Yeah.
organization it is.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great, but now all I know is that you learned about this in a way that is not conducive to the heart of what product's about. Like I said earlier, solving problems and creating
Mm,
experiences. You're
yeah.
focusing on a process, or you're focusing on a mentality of something that is um, much more structured and doesn't
Mm,
enable or empower those teams. Um, and for me, when I see that, it's really about um, you know, when I look back now of how I got into product, I fell into it. I didn't have this like, I want to go
mm,
into product. It was like I was leading a web engineering team. Our general manager, we had moved from 7 million unique visitors a month to 39 million unique visitors a month.
wow.
Our GM was gone all the time on sales calls across the world, in London and across the US.
Mm,
And all of a sudden now I was the one making decisions on what to prioritize, what was the experience going to be, what did the users want, and it just landed on me. And this was
mm,
maybe quite a bit of years before, like 5 or 6 years before the term product manager became something. So for me, it's I know where I got my roots in it, of how I
mm,
learned it, and I always kept an open mentality to learn from many other people who I worked with.
yeah.
One of the people who I consider a strong mentor of mine, who I look up to this day, Christoph Laboon, who is
Mm,
if you're on LinkedIn, look him up. He's got some of the most amazing content nowadays.
wow.
But what I learned from him in my time in that period, I took with me. Every job I took, lessons learned, and because I was always open to learning. And if there was something I
Mm,
didn't know and I felt it was necessary, I went and learned it.
yeah.
And as much as I could, just to get a working knowledge to be speakable on it. And so I know where my sources came from to how I wanted to shape that. But if you're
Mm,
starting off in a bad spot right off the bat because you read something and you think it sounds cool, then I challenge you to go listen to other podcasts from industry leaders. Like, go listen to Marty Kagan on YouTube. Go listen to
mm.
like the Night and Product podcast or
Lenny's.
Lenny's podcast. Yeah, Lenny's
Yeah.
podcast. David Pereira's book on BS management instead of product management. Another great one. These are all people who are talking from the trenches about the real stuff that goes on.
Right.
They're not talking
Yeah.
about, it's not another, 30 minutes about product market fit or, building the value base or whatever. No, they're talking about real stuff that happens. And that's where you're going to find out how you're going to, engage with that.
Yeah, I always tell people, I don't know if it's correct. I always tell people that product management is part theoretical and, of course, agile, Scrum, how things work, strategy, definitions, this kind of stuff. And the other part is kind of formed from experience. So you can't learn. A lot of people ask me how to learn product management. You will learn the theoretical parts for sure, but the other part you have to gain. You have to actually work in a product company for a few years and see how, not as a product manager, because how will I start being a product manager? So we will start most probably as a business analyst, as a UX designer, as an engineer, wherever. But you will see how the product dynamics works, how rollout works, how feedback loop works, how KPIs, how data loops back into decisions. And so you see how things works, and then from this experience, and also maybe in specific sectors and specific industries as well, so you will see how this industry works and how the product works and how users works and user feedback. And this is the most important part of product management, not the theoretical part that we have in books, right?
Yep. No, I agree 100% because I've always said a long time is that I will hire someone on attitude and personality and drive over a resume any day of the week. I can get people to learn the process or the conceptual part or the technical part, but you can't find someone who is going to you can't certify someone in the art of passion or the art of hunger to succeed. Very quickly, I was quasi sort of interviewing someone a couple of weeks ago, and it was an interview that they didn't know about, meaning that I was talking to them and I had mentioned to them that I was looking at possibly making some new hires soon, and I was giving a very, very high level about what the role was. And I had said to this person, I said, I'd love for you to be, if you're interested when it comes around, I'd love to talk more about it and, get you, in to see if if there's an opportunity there. And this person, asked a few questions and said, let me think about it and get back to you. And I was like, all right, cool. And then a couple of weeks later, they got back to me and I wanted to talk to you about, our conversation. I said, okay, fine. And this person was like coming at me hard, like question, digging deep, clarifying, and very structured in how the thought process to the questions were, because this person was looking at it as like, if this opportunity is something that comes to fruition, then I want to be able to know the information to make an informed decision that is best for their product, which is them. Okay. And this person did not understand that I was literally interviewing them when they were asking me these questions, because I was getting a sense for how they handled problems. How did they think out a solution? How did they think out to make a decision? They did all this to get this. So I know now is that if I'm working with this person in a product organization, I know they're going to handle a product decision the same exact way they handled this. And I'm getting insight into how they think. That is when you really see the what's under the hood of the car. Because nowadays I put very little stock in resumes nowadays. Very little. I assume they're all ChatGPT'd. I assume that they are all embellished, like in terms of roles and responsibilities. And I will tell you now, I will grill you in an interview to the point where I will dive into, if you say that you led development of XYZ, I want you to tell me exactly what you did and what were the outcomes and how did you do it and who did you do it with? Or if you tell me that you drove revenue of 8 million% in 64 minutes, I'm I'm gonna go deep into those things, and I'm gonna find out
Mm.
if you're fake or if you're legit. And so that's
Yeah.
why I tell people to be very careful, because LinkedIn is a very big network. When you come out
Yeah.
and apply for roles and you try and pump up the pageant a little bit, someone's gonna
Yeah.
know somebody who knows you or worked with you, and they're gonna tell you what you really did there. They're gonna
Yeah.
tell that person what your job really was, and that's just not a good way to start things. Be yourself, be honest, be authentic.
Mm.
That's gonna work for you in the startup or the corporate world.
Yeah, that's why I actually one of the reasons I started Proven, because we have LinkedIn, which everybody is writing. I can write whatever I like on my own profile, that I am a superhero and I achieved everything that could be achieved in
Right?
the world. So this is LinkedIn, right? But in Proven, you don't write a word about yourself on your profile. There is somebody else, an expert like yourself, thankfully, who writes these profiles to the people. So we say it's a marketplace of credibility, because another problem now, as you mentioned, is in credibility. So improving the profiles of the talents will be written by the experts after these thorough interviews, so it should be a lot more credible. So by the way, since we're at it, you've interviewed thankfully a lot of product managers through Proven, and others, of course, maybe. So what do you think of the level of the talents, of product management talents in the Middle East versus, I don't know, the US or Europe or other places? Honestly, honestly speaking.
Here's where I'm gonna get in trouble now. Okay, love it.
Ah, yeah,
Here's what I've said is that since I've moved to the region 4 years ago, I've been able
yeah.
to work in the UAE. I've done a
Mm,
couple of years in Saudi. I've done a short period in Egypt.
mm,
I can tell you, no BS, straight up honest, is that I think that there is incredible potential
wow.
for call it the junior or maybe mid-level product managers who are getting into it or been in it for a few years. I think
Wow.
that the ability, the openness to hearing new opinions, to learning through diversity of teams,
Mm,
to conquering or maybe this chip on your shoulder that you say we can't do it, I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? I saw that a lot
mm,
in Saudi, and I saw it a lot in the region actually. I think that's amazing because it's like
great.
an opportunity for, I would say, people like myself or other people who've been in the game for
Mm,
a number of years to help literally redefine product management in a region, which
yeah.
is then in a region that takes big bets, that delivers on big claims and so forth. It's a white canvas, a whiteboard of just opportunity that really is
Mm,
right there. What's going to hold that back is going to be, like you said, the founders or the
mm,
people who don't know what we do and try
mm,
to pigeonhole these junior mid-level product managers into conforming. And that's where the
mm,
power of no is so important, and the power of being able to validate your decisions and defend and stick up for what you want to do or what you're
yeah.
recommending is so critical. Because if
Yeah.
I hate making it a us versus them, but if us as product people let them win, it's going to set this back another 10 years here. I guarantee
Mm,
it. And
yeah. I agree.
for me, it's important because with knowing how much talent there is in this region,
Mm,
um, I would, if I was starting a startup, I would start it over here instead of the U.S. without
wow.
without even hesitating, without even hesitating, because you will get a different kind of product person who is very talented, who's very
Mm,
skillful at what they do, but they will not get their hands dirty anymore in a lot of cases. They
mm,
want the meal delivered right on a plate to them. And this isn't all companies, what I'm saying this is that I've seen a lot more over the last 10 years in the US, especially in Seattle,
mm,
where there's a lot of startups, especially on the
mm,
West Coast, where there's a lot of money flowing to take risks and stuff like that. It's easy to be like when you're, oh, we got 3 million US in funding, and we're just gonna burn it all within 8 months, and it didn't work out. No big deal. It's very easy to do that when you have that luxury, but when you're staking, you have family, or you're staking something on a big bet that you're taking as an opportunity, you're gonna go to the bone to make that happen, or to work it and drive towards that. And that's the hustle, that what made product management a success at a lot of those companies in Silicon Valley early on in the day. It was again, I keep driving attitude. I'm not trying to bury this into people's heads, but I'm saying that culture and attitude is what creates great product organizations. Not process, not tools.
Wow. Maybe a topic for another session would be blitz scaling versus, I don't know, careful bootstrapping, but that would take another hour, right? So yeah,
I'm usually out of there by that point. I've usually got enough people mad at me by saying no that they're like, all right, Tony, have a good one.
Sure thing. Yeah, we have a lot of people who are really believer in blitz scaling at all costs without caring a lot. But anyway, we can discuss this some other time. But anyway, and Nilesh got a question here. Hi Tony, if we have 2 high priority items, shall we deliver? Option 1, delivering immediate business value. 2, enabling long-term scalability. Both needs to be addressed, but we can tackle only one. How we can prioritize it? Which factors we need to consider?
So I think this is why I stress the importance and introducing a agreed upon prioritization framework into your teams. I don't care if it's rice, ice, nice, mice, or pice, whatever you want to call it. Have one where you agree on it, because in larger companies that I've worked at in the area, in my career, you will find that, like, if you're using rice scoring, a 5 for reach might mean something on one team, but it might mean something on another, and that causes chaos. So you have to have that consistent definition of what your prioritization scoring mechanism is going to be across the company. And the sooner you do this in startups, it's going to be even better. But I think that by having those aligned definitions, you're gonna have 2 high priority items, but you're gonna know which one is higher priority. And if you have a tie, it's up to your business owner to make that decision on which one matters more at that point. And if there is something, like if I say the reach of something is 5, which means it impacts 100% of our user base, and something with 1 is like under 5% of our user base. And if I go in there and make everything a 5 for reach, as the person who's requesting this, I need to be able to validate or defend, not only to the product person, but to the leadership, that yes, this really is impacting all 100%. This is how you keep them honest and truthful to those prioritization scores. So I think by doing that, having that framework, having to be very transparent, and keeping it consistent through your team's grooming, you'll know what to do.
I agree. Thank you. Okay, so I don't want to take much more time of your more time from you. This is the 1 hour of the clock.
Wow.
So yeah, thank you very much for your time. Invaluable sharing knowledge for sure. A lot of value here. So yeah, do you want to say anything as a closure at the end of this live?
Well, I mean, first off, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on this webinar tonight. I really enjoyed it. I, appreciate it and honored that you would want me on it to, share my opinion on things. So for me, it's humbling, and I thank you for that. And also, wish you both and wish the team continued success in what's going on with Proven. It's been great seeing, the growth and I think that a lot of the problems we talked about tonight, like I said, I wasn't here to plug Proven, but I was just pointing it as an example just to show that. But really just, what I would tell everyone is that, I get asked a lot about, what is like one tip or interview thing when looking at getting into those roles that people can do. And whether it's in the corporate space or the startup space, I would tell you to confidence, be confident. You're getting, you're being interviewed because you've made it past the gate. Okay. And people who are in startups are not looking to hire people who are going to be just saying yes all the time. And large corporate organizations are going to want people who can take things and run with it without being microed. So I would say is like show that confidence. Don't be afraid to brag on your skills. Don't be afraid to show weakness either and tell where you failed. Because for me, an interview I did about maybe 2 months ago, when I asked about an example of something they had done, they brought up this huge failure in the interview. And I said to them, I love the fact that you brought that up because that's something that no one else would do. And that was a differentiator that stood out. So, you know, just always keep your mind open to learning. Always look forward to showing what you're good at and understanding where you need to get better. And, you know, if I ever have the capacity, I'm always here to try and
Great.
help y'all. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Good advice. Thank you. Good night. Thank you very much. Okay.
Good night, buddy. Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Thank you.